Right, greetings everybody and welcome to another video. Umber Rays is doing a test. Is it because he needs to? Not really. This character is coming out on global relatively soon, and I actually do want to do a video talking about her, Exia, and Landu, and the expectations with all of that shit. Oh, hi Sora. Do you want to say hi? Sora says hi to everybody. He's stoked about a new cat character. And speaking of which, that is what we are here to talk about today as I fix my bloody camera. And you know what? Before I'm gonna waste a little more time. I can do this. Check out this. This is my most unnecessary purchase of the year. For people who know what this is, comment below. For people who don't, what were you doing in the 90s? Anyway, today we're here to test out Halloween Alaya. Last time we went over her kit and all of its good points and bad points. And honestly, like as of right now, I'm pretty pro on her just because of the fact that she is generally looking like a very good low-cost character. I'm not even like being impartial on the fact that we pulled her very cheap. I do think that she is overall looking to be a really net positive character for the Thunder element and for people who want to build her. Now, of course, limited cost events do happen quite often, so that is a major consideration about how good she is. But taking a look here, we have actually changed it around a little bit because Thunder Elemental characters are looking quite decent right now. Bridal Alaya actually isn't looking too terrible for how old of a character she has been around. I think that she is actually holding on to her value quite well, especially with the introduction of Landu. So, you know, we might get this situation where people are building Thunder teams because they're very popular and fun. Then we get a bunch of Earth teams, which means more Wind teams, which means more Ice teams, and so on and so forth, so long as it's not just pure light and dark. But yeah, I've put together a few extra Thunder characters just to kind of show off. Here we have Thunder Veritas, which I've been working quite hard to complete with my new guild, and I've gotten quite far with her. But here you can see her stats in this party, and I think that's a good comparison against this character, you know, considering that Crystal Orb is a thing here. That the stat-wise, it actually looks pretty comparison, and Landu is just kind of one of the better Thunder characters right now, who's essentially leading the charge for Thunder to really come back. So it's pretty fun and interesting across the entire board. Let's go in and test it out. By the way, if you're ever wondering about how I choose music, I try and choose music that is generally just I like, because of course that's always one of the things that makes making videos so much more enjoyable for me, is just having music I like in the background, but also stuff that's not too distracting. Every once in a while I make a mistake and choose a song that's just like somebody's like, I can't focus on what you're talking about with this music. To me, this music is almost pitch perfect for essentially having that. But yes, JP is also, I should mention, having a limited time guild war and limited time PvP events where follow-up attacks are completely disabled, and that's pretty interesting in talking about the value of this character, because essentially Ashen Mont's value, Gilgamesh's value, and Shreken's value is pretty low for the next couple events, and that could really make this character shine for a much shorter period of time. So we have all of these abilities here. We're probably just going to cast our first one, which was the when your HP drops below 50%, you get that speed boost, you get that haste boost, as well as giving ourselves Protect and Shell, so we can just cast that. Here we got Thunder Veritas there. And we'll cast a few more skills. As always, buffing, tons of fun. Landu not really a ton of reason to buff him further. He can just kind of sit there and he's perfectly good. All right, and this time around, I'm going to not cast the other ability. And for reference sake, also, if you're curious, no, my character over here is not particularly well developed yet for Thunder Veritas, so don't ask me to show too much for her. But taking a look, let's just take a look at where this limit burst is exactly hitting. Of course, Gilgamesh, not particularly the best character to go up against other mages because he has anti-physical barriers and kind of more of an anti-physical character. But this single target resistance here, we can see the variability that we get on multiple different targets here. Right now, with this character, also Confusion, 100% chance of actually activating on Ashen Mont, which is pretty scary, almost killing Gilgamesh outright right now. And over here, Sephiroth actually quite a bit better. And you might be wondering why. Well, I've actually put a little bit more of the evasion build here to kind of show maybe a potential weakness. But as we know already, the new version of Alaya does have access to some sure hit abilities, which should pad out her damage. So interesting result here. And if we just look at Confusion, Confusion has an actually incredibly high chance of proccing across multiple different characters. So also taking a look at some other abilities here, her damage looking quite well against those two. A little bit worse against Sephiroth, who is rocking 60 single target resistance, so that is quite a bit higher. But just checking out some other abilities here, we can get an idea that her damage output is actually pretty nice, and in combination with other Thunder units, which basically a ton of other Thunder units have decreasing Thunder resistance and whatnot, her damage output should be pretty high, and she will at least be mildly protected behind the idea of her general hate down as well as protect status effect. But let's cast that other ability that she has. Her other one, not the Toad ability, although, you know what, just for funsies, 0% chance, 41% chance. I can't target Ashen Mont because the game won't let me. 39% chance, 48. So that's actually not terrible. I was thinking that it was going to be much lower. Gilgamesh, if we just take a look at him for a second, does have some natural Toad resistance, so that's what's working quite well here. But if this character becomes a problem, Toad resistant runes might actually be quite valuable. So let's cast this ability, give ourselves a little bit of a boost, and then we'll pass it over to Ashen Mont and see what kind of damage we're doing. So first off, I mean, she is a 70 cost, so I am curious about exactly how much damage here. We're doing about 8,651 with her status effect up that is protecting her. She is not based on a barrier here. And her single target resistance is arguably not as good as her AoE resistance, because her AoE resistance is baked into her kit permanently by having the larger the area attack, the less damage she takes. Here, however, one of the things that is working behind the scenes to keep her safe is from her support skill, reducing physical damage taken by 40% for herself, which is removed after 3 hits. But as you can see, such a strong opening attack, such as Ashen Mont's Limit Burst here, would normally put her into a kill state, is actually going to protect her enough to save her from death. And maybe, well, more than likely it will proc with the follow-up attack of getting her down to 1 HP, but keep her alive, activate her haste as well as her HP absorption, which could be more than enough. And she does have her counter ability that would preemptively proc. So interesting to see how that damage has worked out. And just for comparison here, if we're looking here, silence might be a problem, something I didn't talk too much about, but if we're talking about status effect resistance, not having silence resistance feels a little bit of a missed opportunity for a mage always, and feels at least a little bit bad. But taking a look at other characters in the same party, her damage resistance is actually quite respectable. If we look at that limit burst going up against Orlando, pretty much the same. And here, Thunder Veritas taking a absolute kill shot from this, which you would expect from an Earth Elemental character, but it does show the potential damage resistance that is already available. So let's skip ahead, because Thunder Veritas is mostly here just for me to show off, and fire off this limit burst. So again, very powerful limit burst from Gilgamesh. I don't think that most people would contest that issue, but again, we're also looking at a fair amount of damage resistance, and depending on whether we're going up against physical teams, if we're specifically hunting physical teams, we'll probably end up choosing Scholar, because Scholar has the defense buff as well as protecting that defense as well, and we can break magical barriers, which is generally something that a lot of physical characters would have on them. As for Kotodama, Kotodama would be better in this case against Gilgamesh, because we could run that magic damage taken down by 50% for 3 times for self, as well as AoE resistance up by 20, which would greatly reduce the effective power of Gilgamesh here. Taking a look at just some of his other skills, basically we can get the idea that single target here is generally not her strongest point. AoEs are, but her counter actually is hitting quite hard, and that's really, really valuable. That's really nice. All right, skipping ahead. She's again, but she's a little bit early, so let's shove off. Again, Sephiroth here, we look at Curse. Curse is definitely going to be a problem for her, so you'll probably want to run some specific status effect runes, such as Curse Resistance, to name one of the more important ones, as I think she'll be generally good into Sephiroth-based parties, depending on accuracy issues, which may be one of her bigger problems. But with Scholar, she actually does have a support skill to give her a little bit of extra accuracy if you're trying to find sources of it. Throwing out another one of the abilities here. So yeah, I would say that that is generally pretty positive for a 60 cost character to not be taking as much or even close to fatal damage. So now let's just back up, because we do want to effectively get a high amount of damage generally quickly, and the best way to trigger that is going to be on Ashen Mont here. We don't want that silence effect. That would be generally probably a stupid thing. We do want to get that 80%. You know what? Dream big. Let's see if she survives this. And if not, I'll just claim that this was a bad test. So there you go. We survived Ashen Mont's Limit Burst, which is probably one of the more threatening things out there. I don't even think Sadali is anywhere near as threatening to this character, but now we actually have Haste available to us, which is powering up her speed, and she still has Hate down at this point in the match, which is generally pretty good. But now, let's fire off that Limit Burst and see what kind of damage we can get back. All right, maybe we want to be slightly careful about this. I mean, maybe we don't, but let's fire it against Ashen Mont, because he hit her. And we'll also fire it against... All right, and we're not going to have the animation because we are just really interested. And that's a little bit sad that we actually got double dodged there. So, all right, well, sadly that Limit Burst, I mean, it would have been sadder if we had seen the Limit Burst. Let's fire off and see the type of HP restoral that we're getting. Landu, please don't dodge this. Oh, a little bit of example of casting time problems here. And about 1500 attack, so that's not super high HP restoral, but is, you know, something. So that should be an interesting indication of where her general weaknesses lie. If I was to say anything, she's not the most defensive unit, but so much defensive stuff is kind of built into her kit and very easily accessible and optional to her with her sub jobs that I think she'll be quite flexible for multiple different situations, which is really good. Limited cost stuff, absolutely great, but I think she even has a good potential of competing. You may not necessarily want to choose any kind of evasion based teams, as it seems that she seems to struggle with that, and her HP restoral is not super high. So she kind of is going to want characters that will take more of the pressure off of her, allow her to stretch her legs, and really unleash havoc. But the status effects do have pretty good chances of actually proccing both confusion as well as stun. But accuracy might be a trust rune, and curse resistance might be a trust rune that you really want to invest in. So that's all for this demonstration. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and see you all next time for more Wotv stuff.